Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 113 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am one of your hosts, Emerson, and joining me is my co host, Namali.
Hello.
And I swear, the 13 episodes since episode 100 have gone by so much faster than the 13 episodes right after we picked up the podcast again.
That's true. That's true. We seem to be flying through these.
Yeah,
And I feel like I was that's actually a really good point because I think it's because I don't know if you remember, but those original episodes were like 3 hours long.
that's
Like
true.
before we before our I think one of us was just like, we just need to time box this somehow. So that we're not talking for 4 hours every week. But yeah, I think we did that right around expansion launch. There was so much to cover, like
Yeah,
new stuff and
yeah.
and changes and all
We
that
could
fun
have talked
stuff. So
forever at that point, and it was just like we're gonna do 90 minutes. That's our
yeah,
that's our that's our cutoff, which we've actually
exactly.
gotten very good at.
I think so. I think so. I think we're basically
By and
professionals at
large,
this
we
point.
are in the like 1 hour 25 minutes to 1 hour 35 minutes range every week. It's kind of wild, but
We
that's
nailed
not
it.
what you all came here to hear about. Uh,
Not at all.
what you probably came to hear about is the fact that patch 9.2.5 releases this week. That is Tuesday in North America, Wednesday in Europe, and Thursday in I think all like China, Taiwan, Korea all get it the same day. I'm not entirely sure. Um, and there's stuff there. There's not a huge amount of like content stuff, but there's
Right.
systems changes that are important, and there's class changes, including some for the Windwalker, which I might be able
Very
to
nice.
like bully Babylonius into poking his head in for like 5 minutes. I don't know.
I
Actually, we
read. I
shouldn't
read.
do
I
that
read his
because
write up.
oh, you read his
Yeah.
write up. That's what we actually
Yeah.
need.
Yeah. Uh,
Uh, but yeah, so 9.2.5 on Tuesday. Um, but before we get into that, how's progression going? And now,
it's awesome. I haven't done any progression in basically 4 weeks, so I've missed out on all of Anduin,
okay,
and all of Lords of Dread. So the guild did kill Lords last week. They had a heartbreaking 0% wipe basically. At the end of I think Tuesday or really early on Thursday, our second raid night. Ended up still getting through it and getting a couple of Ragalong I think pulls on later, but no. So they're on Ragalon right now, about 50-ish pulls in, sitting right around like the 60% mark.
yeah,
So basically that first sort of drop down phase is sort of where we're dying. But we'll see. I'll hopefully be in starting on Tuesday. And we'll see. I'll have maybe next week a little bit more info on how Ragalon's going. But no, we've just extending at this
yeah,
point. That's all we're doing. So
yeah.
it's a I will say actually my own personal progression. I did one Mythic Plus last week just to get something in my box. And I got Mythic Plus gloves. So 278 gloves. So I was able to turn those into 278 tier gloves. And now I have full Mythic 4 set.
Congrats,
So
congrats.
it's great. It's great. I love being able to gear through Mythic Plus. I don't know if I ever was against that system, I'm an
You
idiot.
were.
I know I was 100% against it. Um but
um,
no, it's going well.
yeah. So for my part, I learned last week not to underestimate the Lords of Dread.
Oh,
Because we went in on that. We had a little bit of time on it on Friday, and we went on Sunday, and we didn't kill it. We
ooh,
had a like 7% wipe or something, right? Like we were close. But we had a few different issues that um came up, and one of them was that I just straight up wasn't as prepared as I needed to be on the like tank positioning end of things. Like obviously we do the like you have your tanks at right angles so they don't cleave each other with the frontals and
yeah.
you move and blah blah blah. The issue was like how quickly and how far you move each time you move when you do the moves. And we had some issues early in the night that were ultimately because people didn't bait the sleepy clouds well, that forced us to do
Gotcha.
extra movement that led to us having a movement strategy that just wasn't actually very good. We reached the end and kind of ran out of space because we hadn't been efficient with our movement. And I
Yeah.
just didn't do the prep necessary to know that that was like I suspected it was going to happen, but I didn't do the prep necessary to like forcefully push back and say no, we can't do that because this
Gotcha.
is going to definitely be the end result. So I don't know if that would have gotten us the kill, but we did have a low wipe where we like tried to move the bosses into the middle and then like cleaved half the raid with
Oh,
one of the
jeez.
frontals. And uh,
Oh, no.
but then when we actually killed it this Friday, we had like a million miles of open space behind us, and we're perfectly
Gotcha.
fine. So
Nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
uh,
So, did you get any Raglan pulls in
yeah,
on Friday?
we had about 2 hours on Regulon. We have also
Nice.
gotten to about 60%. So we're about
Yeah.
30 pulls in, about 60%. The big thing is just like we were actually like gaming out of our minds on Friday, right? Like we
Yeah.
were absolutely crushing it. Quasar kills were on point. We were making it through. We made it through the first down phase with basically everybody alive, and then died to the second
Oh,
set of
wow.
Quasars in phase two. Um, and if that trend continues, like tonight's gonna fly by, right? Like we're gonna see
Yeah, yeah.
so much of this fight. We might not kill it, but we're gonna see a ton of it. But it's also a fight that, much like Anduin, is very easy to just like throw pulls to simple things. You know,
Right, yeah.
somebody kills a Quasar too soon, and then the puddle expires before the next set of Event Horizon or Dark Eclipses comes out, and you just die, right?
Yeah.
Or the other way around, you don't kill the unstable matter or a Quasar in time, or somebody accidentally takes a puddle that they're not supposed to. There's just so many ways to oops, we're dead. And if we're on point, like we were on Friday, we could just fly through this, and there's a chance we could kill it tonight. But
Nice.
I'm not getting my hopes up because of how like we could.
Floor's funny.
It's just so easy to lose pulls on that boss. But yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm excited. It's a fun boss to tank.
Nice. Yeah, I honestly, you were saying a bunch of things. I don't know what any of those mechanics are
Yeah, you
because
should
I
probably
don't get
prepare
them
for
as a
that for
Mistweaver.
Tuesday. Well, you
I
have
don't get any
to.
of them.
Well, you do have to not, not take puddles. You know,
I don't know ice and melee. No,
there
there puddles
are
in
going to
melee?
be puddles very close to
Oh,
melee. Yes,
god damn.
yes.
Alright, maybe I should figure out what's
The
going on in that fight.
Yeah, the mythic positioning. So a lot of people on heroic position the boss farther away from where the quasars spawn. On mythic, you actually position him closer to where the initial set of quasars spawn, and they die quickly, but they die pretty close to the boss.
Okay.
So
Alright, I'll review some of our polls and see
you
what we're
should do
doing
that.
because
If you want to be on the boss,
I
you
have
should
no
do that.
idea what's going on. I have no idea what's going on in that fight.
Did you know that there are
Other than
3 unstable cores downstairs this time on mythic?
no, so you have to kill all 3?
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
At the each intermission there's 3 or is
Each
it you
intermission,
kill
there's
1?
3.
Oh, Jesus. Well, I'm not going down, so I don't.
No, no, no. When everybody goes down, there's 3 of the.
Oh, 3 you gotta those core. I thought you meant the little things you kill. Again, I don't know
Oh,
what anything. I don't
yeah.
know how this boss fight
I
works.
mean,
I know
they're all
you
various
soak a
balls that you
puddle.
kill and soak. Yeah,
Yeah, and you soak in the down phase, and I hit revival and snipe trank on the second one in the first down phase. So, that's basically how I do that boss, at least on heroic. So
yeah, yeah,
now I'll have to do some research. Darn it.
yeah. You're gonna have to do some research. The boss changes in sneaky ways.
Well, and there'll be more changes. I guess we'll have to figure out when we get there today to talk about because Raglan
Yes.
did get a change or two in
Yeah.
terms of the thing. So, but I guess before we talk about the 9.2.5 stuff, there's a couple things that happened outside of 9.2.5 that I just wanted to sort of briefly touch on before we get into that. So, first up is Diablo Immortal, the Do You Have Phones game that Blizzard is coming out with. Finally launches. It goes live on June 2nd, which is Thursday, I believe, if my days of the week are right.
That is right.
Um, Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific goes live on all your fun major iOS, Android, and also PC. Um, so if you're interested, every review I've heard coming out of this game is that it's a fun mobile game. It's not a full blown game release, and so don't expect Diablo 3 on mobile. But no, it seems cool. The couple of like videos I've watched on it seem like it should be kind of fun. So I'll probably play it, give my review next week. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit. So
This is one of those
that comes up.
times that I
Yeah.
am a little bit sad that I don't commute because I just don't
Oh yeah.
have opportunity to ever play anything like this. Is like, when am I gonna sit down and play a phone game? Well, I could play a PC game, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's
I was.
the short like puzzle games and stuff like that that still work for that.
Yeah.
But something more involved like this is like, when am I ever gonna play it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that good times to play it is like if you have kids and they're up in the middle of the night and you're trying to get them to go back to sleep. If you can hold a baby in one hand, you can play a game with the other hand. So you get a lot of Hearthstone Battlegrounds matches in right now. That's how I'm doing it. So you just could have kids, and we'll send that would help maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm
Um,
good, thanks.
so, but no, it should be interesting to play it. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have a similar issue. As I agree. Like, I also don't commute, so it's like, yeah, if I play it, it's like in like the 15-minute downtime I have, like between doing something or before I have to go and do something. So,
Right.
um, but cool. So that comes out this week. Finally, I think folks are somewhat excited. So heard good stuff. Um, Next up that Blizzard posted was Blizzard posted a quick little blue post, particularly around add-ons and the raid mechanic accessibility. They put up this like sort of larger post to try and describe how they view mechanics, particularly around like random mechanics or like the way they sort of measure mechanical complexity inside of a boss fight. And they basically use sort of a three question system, right? It's basically how complex is the mechanic, how much affordance does a mechanic have? Basically, like how clear is it, and how much time are you given to actually react to that mechanic? And then finally, what's the punishment for failure of the mechanic, right? And so the idea was is they basically Blizzard looks at this and does a balance of those three things to sort of identify, how they look at sort of mechanics and things like that. If something's, you know, extremely difficult, extremely high complexity, extremely high affordance, and failure is sort of binary. That's sort of one thing that they want to be very clear in the UI about that mechanics coming. So they sort of give a couple of examples of that, and how they view it. So, and really the fact that I think the big thing to come out of this is like they don't create these mechanics to thwart add-ons, right? I think their positioning was is they just make complex mechanics because they want to make them, right? Not that they want you to have to install an add-on to figure it out. And they sort of point to like complexity around like mechatorks, like bots, and a little bit around sort of the Among Us phase of Lords of
Yeah.
Dread, right? As like not extreme, like trying to limit add-on information, but also making the mechanic very clear about how you need to communicate. Although I'll tell you, like Among Us, particularly with that guild, like the main guild that people sort of point to is the guild of all deaf players. They actually just killed Heroic Jailer, I think this week at some point.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was last week. And yeah, how like the Among Us mechanic for them without add-ons to like vote or like point to things is a very difficult to communicate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also something. So the Among Us mechanic in particular is significantly more difficult to do without add-ons with large group sizes, because it's
Yeah.
always two imposters. You always have to find both, and if you ever fail to find both, you lose. Um, and that's a lot harder to do with, you know, 30 people in the group, a lot of visual clutter, than it is with 10 people in the group and not very much visual clutter.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of those mechanics that really does not scale well with group size. Um, they also pointed out they called the Loom of Fates from Fatescribe high affordance, and I take issue with that personally. Um, on normal and heroic, I would agree that it's fairly high affordance. It's pretty. You have a lot of wiggle room for like someone to start it and then die, and then somebody else to pick it up and carry the torch.
Hmm.
On Mythic, that is not a high affordance mechanic at all. You have to have a weak aura with the way that they tuned that in order to actually
Right.
do it. Um, and that's just a timing thing. If you had more time, then it would be a high affordance mechanic. You wouldn't need an assignment weak aura for it. Um, but because they tuned it so that you had to be perfect at it, and then made it, randomly assigned, you just have to have a
Right.
weak aura for it. There's literally no way around it. You
Yeah.
cannot do that without a weak aura. And it's the same issue as Queen Ajara on Mythic, the intermission phase. Random assignments with extremely tight timing, and if you miss the timing, you wipe.
Right.
And
Yeah. It's actually a good example. Yeah.
um, the my issue with the Fatescribe one slash the Ajara ones in particular is that if you make it easier by increasing the timing, the mechanics immediately just fall flat. They're not, they go from being impossible to being trivial if you add
Right.
10 seconds to the timer, right?
Right.
And you have a weak aura. If you have a weak aura and you add 10 seconds to the timer, the mechanic is trivial. If you don't have a weak aura, the mechanic becomes doable. So like that's one of the really hard things about the game having stuff like weak auras is that
Right.
if they initially release it with, you know, having it tuned where you don't need a weak aura for it on Mythic, people are still going to write the weak aura and they're just going to trivialize the mechanic. So do you plan on them having the weak aura and then tune it for them having it? And if you do that, you know, like I guess my thing is like if they're going to do that, they should actually just find the reason that you need a weak aura to do the assignment in the first place and just bake that into the game. Like either bake the assignments into the game in a clear way. Like imagine if on Fatescribe when it assigned people debuffs, like all the different rings were like colored or numbered in some way.
Yeah, and
And
you
your
basically had
debuff
to
like
run
put
them.
a glowy thing over your head that pointed you to the correct one. And you went and you did that one, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I agree because, like, those type of mechanics that require weak aura is the biggest thing that pushes you there is, like, your reaction time, right? So, like,
Right.
the minute you make that reaction time, the time it takes for you to react to it longer, you again make the mechanic fairly simple to negotiate, right? Or
Right.
to counter. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I think even with weak auras, right? Like, I guess from my perspective with WoW is that WoW has always had a very customizable UI. So it's like a history of the game and as something that like is baked into like just playing WoW are add-ons, right? So the fact that you have to download a weak aura to like negotiate the mechanic, I would feel is less of an issue if it was more difficult to modify the UI or to even like access weak cores such as that, right? Like I get that you want everything in game, and I 100% am there with that point,
Yeah.
but I sort of give them a pass slightly on stuff like this just because of the ease of the modification for the UI,
Right. I
right?
mean, but then if they had had that kind of auto assignment thing built into it, right? Then we wouldn't have had to deal with all the things like the weak aura being buggy, and you know
Right.
one person not getting like they reloaded their UI and they didn't have the note pushed again for them, so they got their assignment and it was just in conflict with everybody else. You know,
Yeah.
that's the kind of frustrating experience that can be entirely resolved by them removing the need for there to be a weak aura. But
Yeah, no, I agree. Or you get the our biggest issue this tier as a classic example is Pantheon with the wrong assignment weak auras for what icon to run to
yeah,
when you get the Night Hunters.
yep,
Like, and there's 2 different ones that assign them in 2 different ways, so, like, we
yeah,
had a couple of wipes to people just having the wrong
having the
one. No,
wrong ones. Yes,
yeah, I mean, yeah, I 100% get that. I think that's the maybe, like, the one trade-off because like, the other thing, though, is that and this is maybe my only point, is it not my only point, but my final point would be, like, if they had auto-assigned through the game itself, like, what color for Fatescribe particularly, like, if what ring you would go to, the mechanics then super easy. Like, it then
well,
becomes
I think that then makes it a little bit more of like that gives them room to tune it more tightly. Like imagine if they had tuned it tightly enough on Mythic that you couldn't just have everybody go left, right? But they auto assigned it instead.
R would so they would have auto-assigned 2 people to 1 ring if that ring had to go the opposite direction?
Right. But then you
Or
have to
w
do the little dance where like there's two people that have to pass. So like
yeah,
one person has to step off and go around and the other two people go by and you know.
that's true. Yeah. So,
So then
I mean, that
it's a different
yeah,
mechanic there. Instead of like because we all ever nobody did the actual mythic mechanic of Fate Scribe.
yeah,
No one did it. Literally zero people in the world have ever tried to do that mechanic as intended.
right. Yeah,
And that is in part probably because they were a little bit like they gave a little bit of wiggle room in the tuning that they wouldn't have otherwise because they weren't doing the assignments. But I really just want them to stop with the randomly assigned things where your entire raid or a significant portion of your raid has like 15 seconds to do some challenging coordination task because that's just every single one of those is miserable and there's just a weak aura for it and you just live or die by the weak aura doing it correctly. It's
no,
awful.
that's yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I'd be happy with more Mechatork type mechanics, the colors.
Yeah,
I think that was an interesting one. And didn't get cluttered with like a bunch of people yelling. So,
yeah,
um, well, cool. Well, I mean, it's an interesting post to see how they view it. I mean, I don't think we're
yeah,
gonna get away from them. I don't think we're ever gonna get. I think we'll get more mechanics like the Among Us mechanics moving forward. I think that's might be a direction we see at least for the opening raid next year, where it's like they just limit like information into the UI,
yeah.
and then you have to kind of figure out a way around it.
That's
But
what Mechatork was too, right? Because you would go
yeah,
in and you could see your color, the other person could see, or you could see their color, and the other person could see yours. But the other way, you couldn't
yeah,
see
yeah.
your own, and there was no
Yeah, there was
buffer
no
or
UI.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, there was no like details. Yeah, coming out of the game to tell you. Yeah, no, yeah. Well, hopefully we see more of those. Maybe they'll be a little bit more fun to talk with
yeah,
or to talk through. So,
yeah,
um, well, cool. Well, a couple more sort of just wrap up things, and then we'll get into the meat of new stuff in 902.5. So, there's a couple of 902.5 things, but they're not particular what was being launched. So, first up is there's a glitch. There was a glitch on PTR. I don't know if they actually closed this one. I haven't been tracking it too much, but I saw that Mr. GMT or Mr. GM, sorry, posted a video of him basically creating a cross faction guild. Um, so the way it worked, and I don't know if this still works, but you could take a guild charter into any sort of instance content like Torghast or an instance with a player of the other faction. You would then be friendly with that player and you would have them sign the guild charter. When you got all 10 signatures and the guild was created, you could then have both Alliance and Horde people in the same guild. And also, the Alliance people could invite other Alliance players into that guild, and the Horde people could invite other Horde players into the guild. So you would essentially have a cross faction guild.
yes.
Um, which is I don't know if they're going to leave this in, but it's interesting that it's funny that this is how it works, and it basically means like the tech is sort of there, right, for cross faction guilds.
I'm really curious what this is going to mean. Like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
try creating one of these on Tuesday.
yeah,
Um, we're gonna find out if it breaks in horrible ways. We're not like moving all of our guild stuff over to it if we do manage to create a cross faction guild. But
yeah.
basically, our alliance guild will be cross faction if it works on Tuesday when release happens. And we will, I guess, kind of be guinea pigs. Like all of our gold and stuff is going to stay in the single faction horde guild. But
Yeah.
um, if this works, it's going to be nice, and maybe it just kind of sticks around as like an unsanctioned way to create a cross faction guild for the people that want
Yeah.
it.
It'll be it'll be interesting. I mean, I think they still have a couple of bugs they need to work through. Like there's probably still some stuff that's gonna break horribly, like
Yeah.
actual transfer of mats maybe and things like that might break. Like, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, no, it'll be I mean, if this is what's to come, maybe they're gonna start just dissolving the factions, which would be nice, I'll say.
Yes, I
Be
agree.
nice.
I agree. Also, on the topic of 9.2.5, there's a very common point of confusion about what this means for cutting edge AOTC, Keystone Master, and all that stuff. Um, Season 4 is the actual cutoff for all of those. 9.2.5 does not come with Season 4. We did get an announcement that Season 4 is coming, quote, later this summer. And reading
Yeah.
through the jargon, there's some, like, I don't know, shenanigans where they have to actually be somewhat specific about this. Summer ends on September 1st. So, Season 4 is coming sometime between May 31st, which is this coming Tuesday, and August 31st. So there's that 3 month window somewhere in there. It's coming.
Nice.
Very not a like huge amount of news, but like it is important to know because like my guild has not killed the jailer yet. We still have
Yep.
time in order to kill the jailer. I suspect we won't see season 4 until they kind of reach their internal target for number of CE guilds slash number of
Yeah.
AOTC guilds, because this tier has
Considering
been significantly longer.
Yeah, because and considering what I last time I checked, it was 18 alliance guilds in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Yes.
Which is,
Yes. And I
so
guess like on that note,
dumb.
we can get more into the 9.2.5 stuff, the kind of main topic. And
Yeah.
kind of jumping around a little bit, Cross Realm Mythic opens next week.
Yes.
So normally you wait, or they wait for the both Hall of Fames to fill,
Hmm.
but that's going to take so long for Alliance this time around. It really
Yeah.
is. It really, really is. So with the cross faction rating opening next week, they are also enabling cross realm rating. And I am really hopeful that they just don't turn off cross realm rating in the future. Like day one of Mythic next year, I want it to be open for cross realm.
Yeah.
The stated reason for not doing that is they want guilds like faction, not faction, the server races, the realm races to still matter for the people that care about them. But
Right.
there's two kinds of realms in the world. There's the Area 52s where it doesn't really matter. You're not competing with one of
Yeah.
the guilds that is literally like top 20 in the world. It's going to get first on Area 52. And
Yeah.
then there's the Terralians of the world where there was legitimately for a lot of time, like for a long time, there was a legitimate like 5 teams in the top 5 that would get CE within like 3 weeks of each other, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's not the case anymore. Terralion has one realm, one serious CE guild on it. There's no more race.
Yeah. And I think too, even on a realm like Mal'Ganis, which is in a probably more similar to Area 52 than anything. Like I couldn't tell you any of the other guilds close to us in progression, like at all. Like I couldn't name them. I couldn't tell you, but I could tell you other guilds that are close to us in progression, like on
Right.
other servers,
But they're
right?
not your, yeah, because like
Uh,
I know the names of a couple of other guilds that are around our level that we have been like swapping places with tier over tier.
yeah.
Um, and that is, yeah, that's absolutely correct. Uh, and maybe I'm jaded because of like the death of Terralion from all of
Yeah.
the economy stuff this expansion. Um, but it, I don't think the realm race is a serious consideration. Um,
Yeah.
it's funny actually. So looking with some external knowledge, bringing from our stats on Warcraft logs, the realm pages for Classic WoW are huge. Like the realm progress and rankings pages are huge. People love those.
Yeah.
Barely like in comparison, barely any traffic to those on retail. People don't super care on retail. So I think there is literally like a cultural difference there. People do care on Classic. Um,
Right.
and some of it may also be because the classic realms are a little bit more balanced. There's not as much like, oh, this realm has literally no one and this realm has literally everybody. There's a lot more
Yeah.
in that like middle band.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be, yeah, that, and I think too, just the folks who play classic, I think are a little bit more in tune with like their specific server, right?
Yeah, no
And what
cross
they
realm
do there.
stuff at all,
Yeah,
means that your realm means a little bit more. You know the people who are on your realm maybe a little bit more because you've done heroic dungeons with them and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. So yeah, so Crossroad Mythic opens next week. And then I guess we'll sort of jump around. We'll take the tuning, the class tuning and raid tuning stuff for last. But another thing I just wanted to point out, I didn't actually put this in the notes, but I was just reading the actual patch notes as we're talking here. Um, and this is nice, is that so renowned farming on alts, or even just
Yes.
renowned farming on mains. Basically, the renowned catch up is now up to 60. You can also a buy the sort of the buy on account item and grant yourself 60 renowned right off the bat. And then essentially they've added 100% drop rate of renowned to a bunch of different activities, such as Mythic and Mythic Plus dungeons. Torghast layers 9 through 16 will always grant one renowned. Doing a boss encounter or raid encounter will grant you a renowned, and then winning a rated battleground. So basically, at this point, layer 9 Torghast is probably the best way to spam out capping any sort of renowned needs you have on your alts or even on your main if you want to cap everything out. So,
So, a really
um,
important thing about this being renowned 60, all of the capstone traits for your soulbinds are at most renowned like 58 or 57. So this
yeah,
gets you You don't get any enhanced conduits. The +2 rank on conduits you don't get from this, but you do get all of the soulbind traits, which is pretty big for some sublines like Dreamweaver that have a very powerful capstone.
Mhm.
This is way better.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, they've also done a couple other things to Torghast itself, and we sort of mentioned it there. But basically, all wings of Torghast are open all the time now. So if you only wanted to do a specific one to farm this sort of layer 9 renowned,
Or you never want to
uh,
do the one with the stupid mobs that spam the healing reduction.
yes,
Yes.
God, yeah. So that's now a thing, which is nice for your Torghast farming. I guess one other quick thing too, I think we talked about this at some point, but they decreased the amount of times you need to craft legendary items to get the next rank. Now it's down to what, like I think you need to craft 3 of each rank to unlock the
Next
next
one.
higher rank
Yeah,
or something like
they
that.
nerfed it by 2/3. It was 10, it
Yeah.
is now 3. That is also there's a like we've talked before about the significant upfront cost for legendaries.
Yeah.
It's pretty big that they've cut that by, 66%, right? We're going to
Yeah.
see a drop in legendary prices for the higher ranks as a result of that. And they already dropped once this tier. So,
Yeah.
that's great. Like legitimately, I have a level 60 alliance character that I prepped for this patch, and I went to buy legendaries and I realized that I couldn't because I didn't have the gold. I had 15,000 gold from leveling, which is not a small amount of gold, right? Like I had 15,000 gold. I could not buy a single legendary. I had to buy, like, I'm wearing 226 gear from Zereth Mortis. I had to
Yeah.
buy eye level 210 legendaries
Legendaries. Oh
in
god.
order to
No.
have gold left.
Oh
Um,
no. Oh
so I
no.
took an eye level downgrade over the world quest gear in order to put legendaries on. How bad does that feel?
Yeah, it sounds
My
that's awful.
legendary is lower eye level than my world quest gear.
Yeah.
Um,
That's terrible.
and I was going to actually transfer gold to myself, right? Like you used to be able to do this trick where you would go to the auction house and you would list like a gray item for 100,000 gold,
Yeah.
and then you would go to your main on the other faction, you would buy it, and you would lose the auction house cut. You would lose your 5%, but you would get all the other gold on your alliance character. That's great. With the change to the auction house, they have fixed that. You can no longer buy your own auctions, which I'm
Yeah.
sure actually has like ramifications for people doing exploity stuff, breaking like trade skill master
Yeah.
data and like self dealing and wash trading effectively kind of stuff. But uh also meant that there is no way for you to transfer gold to yourself effectively. I mean, I could have roped in guildies, right? I could have been like, okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
list this here. I want you to go, I'm going to give you 100,000 gold. Go spend it on this thing. That's significantly higher effort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then you wanna do that. Yeah, for sure. And I guess, yeah, we talked about the bug with cross faction guilds, but they are also launching just cross faction content with this.
Yes.
So, instance content you can do across faction, so that's like mythic raids, or sorry, yeah, mythic raids, dungeons, rated BGs, stuff like that, can now be cross faction. Communities are cross faction. Notably, guilds should not be cross faction. We talked about that bug, so it looks like you
Right.
might be able to do that. But no, so this is sort of the cross faction instance patch. There are a handful of instances that aren't eligible to be cross faction.
Yep.
Almost all of them contain a alliance or horde specific either boss fight, boss order, or just like in the case of Siege of Borealis, a starting point in the dungeon
Right.
is different if you're horde or alliance. So yeah, so all the trials from Wrath um, are not eligible. So Trial of the Grand Crusader, or sorry, Trial of the Crusader, Trial of the Champion, which is the dungeon. The Vault of Arkanov, which is the Wintergrass dungeon, is not there. Icecrown Citadel, different ship battles. Barrett Hold, which I forget which that one is. I think that's in Cataclysm. I think
Yeah.
maybe.
I think that's the Toborad dungeon
Yeah.
or
Oh
raid.
yeah. Correct. Yes. Siege of Borealis, like I mentioned, Battle to Zara lore, because you have different starting bosses after the initial one. And then Dark Maul Citadel, which is the Exiles Reach dungeon, which I guess
I
is
like that they felt the need to specify that
yeah,
part
Just
because
the starter zone.
yeah, that one will, by the way, queue you into the dungeon with NPCs if there aren't enough players around,
Yeah.
which is definitely a thing that's happened before.
Very cool. So yeah, so cross faction, I don't think my guild is planning to actually do anything like this, just because we're super lazy, and so like our biggest hindrance is like mats,
Yeah,
basically transferring them and doing that type of stuff. So I think our stance is if you want to change factions, you're more than welcome to, but just make sure you have your own flask pots, armor kits, all that fun stuff.
right.
So
Yeah, that's we are going to I need to like do a raid team ping this afternoon probably and clarify what our rules are. But basically we're going to be like, yeah, you can transfer. You have to let an officer know that you are transferring before you do it and let us give you the thumbs up just so we can like make sure we don't have so many people transfer that it actually causes logistical problems.
yeah, exactly.
I don't think it will, but just making sure. And then uh yeah, I mean, you're on your own for consumables and repairs at that point. We will have a like sister guild we're gonna have. So our main guild is occasional excellence. We're gonna have occasionally alliance, um,
Nice.
or occasional alliance. I'm not entirely sure yet. One of the two, and the uh, yeah, it's gonna have there will be a guild bank. It is not going to be stocked with the gold from our horde guild. It is not going to
Yeah.
have gold cap of gold in there like our horde guild. So you are on your own for repairs and materials on alliance.
Yeah, I think that's I don't think anyone said anything in my guild about doing it other than just like our raid leader was just like you're on your own is sort
Yeah,
of their point. So it's
we
like,
have a few people that are interested in it. Honestly, the
yeah,
biggest thing for me is just like I have friends that play alliance, and now I can actually do things with them.
nice.
Like part of
Yeah.
the reason I started leveling the mages because I wanted, and then 9.2.5 started happening. I was like, oh, okay, I'm actually able to do things with everybody. So I just
Yeah.
finished leveling in this alliance because I figure it's also going to end up, I think, being the GM of the alliance guild. Uh,
Nice.
so yeah,
Nice. 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 Awesome. Awesome. So so yes, there's cross faction stuff coming. So maybe more in 10.0. Um
and they
the other
didn't.
thing, oh sorry.
Sorry. On that note, this is not in the notes, but it worked on PTR, so we're assuming it's going to be correct on live. You're going to be able to trade within a group. So if you're in a cross faction instance with a player of the opposite faction, you are going to be able to trade items, not just the like um, items that are normally eligible to be traded cross realm. You're going to be able to trade materials and stuff between factions. Obviously, trading like 18 people Vantis runes is going to be a huge pain in the rear because they can't just go to the guild bank and pull them out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but you're going to be able to trade them. You're also going to be able to mail items cross faction. So that
Oh,
solves
very cool.
my problem of getting gold to my alliance alt. I'm going to be able to mail myself gold like I do with my horde
Nice.
alts.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Um Well, yeah, awesome. I mean, it sounds like it'll be fun. Funnily enough, all my friends that have played Alliance quit because they had nobody to play with. So I'm in the opposite situation with you, where just everybody I know now is Horde. So cool. So one more thing. So final topic, then we'll talk about changes. Is Blizzard did put into the game with this patch a new social contract. Basically, something you have to agree to the first time you open the game before you're allowed to play. And basically, it's a way for Blizzard to sort of essentially say, "Don't be an asshole to other players." Like basically, what the social contract is. It's sort of an idea of like, this is the way you should conduct yourself while you're playing the game, and you sort of have read, understand, and agree with, you'll conduct yourself in this way as you play the game. Um, I think the biggest thing with this too, because they pair this up with a more streamlined. They talk about more streamlined ability to report player behavior. It
Yep.
basically is going to be able for them to quickly be able to sort of hand down punishments to individuals that break sort of this code of conduct, right?
Yeah.
Because at this point they're saying you've reviewed it, you've read it, you've agreed to it, and hey, very clearly in the logs we can see you did X, Y, and Z thing. Here's your timeout, for whatever the infraction was.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm a little bit hopeful that this is going to curb the toxicity in leveling dungeons. That's honestly, I think, one of the areas that this could improve if people feel empowered to report people that are just absolute dirtbags in
Oh
leveling
yeah.
dungeons. Just absolute, complete fucking shitlords. Um, I just finished leveling my mage. I did a good number of leveling dungeons while doing that. And there are some awful people in those dungeons. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Like you've had people leave. Like I would rather have dealt with people leaving my, Mythic Plus keys than deal with these people in leveling dungeons. It's so bad. It's, not every dungeon, most of them are fine. But then you get in one and it's just like I feel dirty just being in the same instance as you. Please leave.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like if people have read and agreed to this, they know what the expectations are and they know they can go and they can report people for this kind of behavior. Like, WoW dungeons have a reputation for being toxic. They just do.
Yeah.
It's been built over 15 years of just no, nothing, anything, nothing being done about that behavior. So I'm hopeful that this actually might result in something being done about that behavior.
Yeah.
Because even if like Final Fantasy has a reputation for there being people who will be passive aggressive, very passive aggressive. There are some people definitely that will. I would much rather deal with one person being like snarky and passive aggressive every, a few dungeons than deal with some of the stuff people say and do in leveling dungeons.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I also it's funny, like you mentioned, like it's generally they're okay, but there's always that one that's real bad. And that's basically my same experience. I just finished leveling my priest, doing nothing but dungeons through 60 to or whatever, 50 to 60 all through
Yeah.
Shadowlands. And like, yeah, they're generally they were great. They were not great. Maybe they were a little slow. Maybe I might have been the passive aggressive one a couple of times, but like I can there was one that was just like this guy just went off and like it was so it's one of those situations where if you're that upset, I feel like just leave. But like
Yeah.
this individual like stayed in there just to continue to like say things. I'm
Berate
like, dude,
somebody.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, dude, just like
I tried to, and
you're
I tried to vote kick somebody that was doing that. And
yeah,
the vote kick didn't pass, and then they vote kicked the person that they were going off on. I just left the dungeon at that point. Like I'm a DPS, they can
yeah,
replace somebody. Once somebody
yeah,
else has been kicked or removed from the dungeon, there's no leaver penalty either, so you can just leave and go for another dungeon. But like, yeah,
it's
I don't know if
crazy.
this is actually going to have a major impact on that, but I am hopeful that maybe people will be like, because right now, if you go and you try and report somebody, right? Like
Yeah,
your options for like why are you reporting this person are very limited. Like they basically
yeah,
the implication is basically that they need to be saying some real like racist awful stuff in order to warrant a report.
yeah, yeah.
And that's shouldn't be the case. Like it just shouldn't be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be hopefully it makes it better. We'll see. But no, it's that's I think that was the one of the bigger things that people had um sort of latched onto as something new for the patch. So it'll be fun to see how it plays out. So um well cool. I think finally we can maybe turn our attention to like the fun stuff in the patch, which is all of the crazy class changes, bug fixes, and then talk a little bit about the massive nerfs to Mythic Sepulcher, which I feel like is just a headline every week that we talk about this new raid or this raid is like every week it's a new round of quote unquote massive nerfs. And so the trend continues with 9.2.5. But
Yes.
um,
These are
I guess
not
for some,
for people that are watching today, these are not active this week. They got announced on like Friday. They're not
yeah,
active right now. They are turning on with your realms restarts with the release of 9.2.
yep, yep. But yeah, so with 9.2.5 on the class change side of things, a couple I guess points I wanted to make, and then you can sort of jump in. Particular to we'll say monks, really not like Mistweaver got basically nothing. We got one PvP talent changed our Zen Focus T, which basically gave you one uninterruptible cast. Had its cooldown reduced from 45 to 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds, you can do a heal without being interrupted, which was cool. I don't PvP, but I'm assuming because all of our healing, casted healing, is the same school of magic. it sucks when you get interrupted.
Yeah.
Um, so that'll be a nice change to Mistweaver. I think the bigger changes came with Windwalker, where they just got a massive damage increases to basically all of their single target abilities. So
Yeah.
20% across the board, but it was 20% increase to Rising Sun Kick, the primary target of Fist of Fury, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, and Fist of the White Tiger. All increased by 20% each. And basically, Blizzard's note here, you can sort of read it as they pop up, but essentially, Windwalker single target damage sucks. We're basically taking a more extreme approach and trying to push it up, particularly in raid content. Um, so yeah, so huge single target nerfs. I think a bunch of sims were run by the old Windwalker community. Basically, they're saying about a 10 to 12% increase to your single target damage, um, which I don't think makes Windwalker necessarily best damage dealer, but
Right.
definitely bumps them up from a overall perspective to be slightly more competitive than they are.
Yeah.
Um,
This is honestly the developer note actually in particular is very encouraging because it specifically calls out improving their single target damage to help make up for the fact that their niche, their AoE niche, simply may not come up, which it didn't really this tier. Like you look at
yeah,
Lords of Dread, Ragolon, the Jailer, Anduin, none of these had really significant AoE components. Like Anduin, obviously, if you're trying to parse and pad, AoE is a huge part of it. But in terms of actually progressing the fight, it's not important. Like you just
yeah,
you the things just die to people using their cooldowns in that phase. So it's not really a big deal. So I'm really curious. So I'm pulling up the statistics on damage. Let's look at boss damage. Damage to bosses. For Windwalker. Let's see. What's a good boss?
single
Uh,
target boss.
yeah, let's do Halandris. It's early enough that there's going to be a good number of Windwalker parses, right? But
Yeah.
not so early that it's going to be just like everybody and their dad doing it. Um,
Oh, maybe now.
yeah, so I mean, this is the single target DPS rankings for all percentiles on Halandras over the past 2 weeks. There's so Windwalker Monk is here with the median being just under 11k DPS. So if we take like the one that's literally in the middle, that is Retribution Paladin, and their median is just under 12k. So if you take about 10 to 12% buff to Windwalker, that is actually putting them up here where Retribution Paladin is on single
Yep.
target on Halandras. Uh, which like you said, it's not making them the best, not by any means, but it is giving them a pretty substantial improvement and making the gap between them and the next highest
Exactly.
smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, which is what I think. I mean, I think you'd want, right? Like, I think Windwalkers have consistently had terrible single target damage, right? And
Yeah, it's
so,
been consistently bad for a long time.
yeah, yeah. But so now they get those buffs, which is awesome for the Windwalker community, I think. So congratulations on doing more single target damage. I guess we should say too, this doesn't apply to PvP, which I don't know if Windwalker is good in PvP,
Every single one of
but
these hotfix notes says this change does not apply to PvP. It's like they really want to be sure people understand Windwalker is not getting buffed in PvP.
yeah, exactly,
They're really
exactly,
adamant about that.
yeah. Yeah. So but no, so they get their little single target, not little, but they get their fairly sizable single target damage buffs. So yeah, maybe Babs will go back and actually play Windwalker again now instead of being a dirty feral druid or whatever he plays now. Whatever. So yeah, so I think I guess the other thing too, and we'll maybe use this time to transition to tanks. So tank threat, basically every tank specialization, they've increased the threat that you generate while you're in tank specialization. So essentially every tank just does more threat. But I'm assuming you have a point to make on that.
So they did not put a number in the hotfix notes. I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why they didn't put a
Yeah.
number here. It is about an 18% increase to tank threat is the
Okay.
specific number. Um, and they have this note. I don't. They had this note. Okay. Uh, And they basically say blah blah blah. We've heard a lot of complaining about this. Where our goal is that a tank that is actively doing their damage rotation to an enemy should be able to maintain threat, but that just using AOE spells like Consecration and Death and Decay shouldn't be enough by itself. And I don't really know where they want to draw the line on this because like Consecration and Death and Decay are like really low damage, right? Like nobody's holding threat on anything with those in any universe right now because of how little damage they do.
Right.
Um, but things like Keg Smash and Avengers Shield and Blood Boil should be enough. Is like my read on this. Is what they're trying to say. And I don't know that 18% is necessarily enough to eliminate a lot of the issues with stuff like Fury Warriors. Fury Warrior dropping Spear is still going to be probably taunting everything in range, just realistically speaking. Um,
Yeah.
but this does make things better. It's going to make threat rips just way less common. This is a much bigger problem in keys and on boss fights with ads that spawn midway through. So as an example, I lost threat pretty routinely on the Monstrous Soul. You know, we had druids on the second Monstrous Soul in the first intermission phase using Ravenous Frenzy there. And so when they would hit their
Mhm.
Ravenous Frenzy burst, it would just go and punch them. Like we just had to have a taunt ready for it.
Yeah.
And that kind of sucks. Just kind of
Yeah.
sucks. Um, that luckily neither Lords of Dread, Raglan, or the Jailer has any ads that actually are tankable, so it's not an issue on those. Um, it actually has a secondary effect, maybe. Well, there's this little thing we can get into for like how threat works. In order to rip threat off somebody, you have to go a certain percent above the amount of threat that they have. So if they have
Yep.
200 threat, you have to reach 220 threat as a melee DPS in order to rip off of them, or as another tank to rip off of them. So the more threat you generate, the higher in absolute terms that threshold becomes. With this threat buff, now instead of you having 200 threat, you're going to have 220 threat. And in order to rip off of you, somebody is going to have 22 over you. They're going to have to reach 242 instead of 220. So that actually should have some improvement to accidentally ripping off your co-tank. If your co-tank is a
Yep.
Blood DK this tier, you've dealt with it. Blood DKs do a lot of damage during Dancing Rune Weapon, and they have Dancing Rune Weapon a lot. They rip thread a lot. It's very annoying. But the absolute value of that 10% is going to grow faster because of this buff and should have some impact on threat rips between tanks. Not necessarily a huge impact, but some impact.
Yeah. That's good.
Um, Another Brewmaster specific thing that is also not in the hotfix notes. Uh, from
What?
PTR testing, the 4-piece bonus for Brewmaster monks has gotten some changes. Um, I don't have the full details handy right now because I am not the one that actually tested this. But there were two main issues with the Brewmaster 4-piece. The first one was actually a bug. Basically your health bonus from the 4-piece was entirely determined by the last target that was hit by Keg Smash. When you use it in AoE, the last target is effectively random and never the target that you actually cast it
Yeah.
on. But other than that, effectively random. Um, that had some really bad interactions on certain bosses, aka Regalon. If you keg smash Regalon while he's stacked next to one of the downstairs cores, you will lose your entire health bonus every time. Because
Okay.
it will always hit the core second, and the core has a 99% damage reduction, so it will reduce your entire HP bonus from all 10 stacks of your bonus to 1% of its value. And so the bug was that your last hit was determining the whole stack. This had upsides. It let you do things like on Ingram Moloch in Misatuna Scythe. If you had a crit with a damage amp from Weapons of Order, you could hit like almost 500,000 health because you would have 10 stacks that were treated as having a 40% damage bonus from Weapons of Order and having crit, which is just not possible.
Yeah.
Um, So this is both removing that like absurd amount of HP you could get there, but also removing the stuff like just dying on Rygalon because you lost your HP bonus. So
Right.
it's going to be a lot more consistent value due to that change, um, just with not as extreme highs and lows. The other change is that they actually changed how max HP works for the 4 pieces. I don't think this
Okay.
is a general change, but when you lose your 4-piece bonus or you shunt your 10th stack off by applying a new one, if that reduces your max HP, it does not reduce your current HP by a corresponding amount, which is how max HP bonuses normally work. We've done a bunch of testing to verify this works across the board with max HP bonuses. Fortifying Brew, Rally, all these effects that increase your max HP work like this, where they subtract the amount of HP gained from both your current and maximum. And for most effects that are like a 10 to 20% HP bonus, it more or less preserves the amount of HP that you had as a percent. But you could, if you went enough decimal places over, you could see that it changed. Like for Fortifying Brew as an example, you generally have to go to like the third decimal place in order to see that the percent did in fact change. But it did. Um,
Gotcha.
for this, for the Brewmaster set, as we've discussed at length on this podcast before, it could kill you.
Yeah.
It could take you from 50% HP to zero. So it was actually a pretty serious problem. We have a pin in Brew questions because of how frequently this came up, and because of a related bug in details where it only uses your max HP when you died. So it would look like you were at full HP and then died, when in fact you were at 50% HP and then died.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, that is actually a buff to the tier set as well. Um,
Yeah.
what happens is when you get, basically you're getting more healing out of it now. Some of the healing is sneaky, where or some of the health loss before was kind of sneaky, sneakily reducing the amount of healing you got from it, and that's no longer happening. So you're going to just passively like kind of get healed more from the set than you were before. um
Okay. Okay.
on the whole, this makes the 4 piece way better, way better, just basically by virtue of the fact you're not going to randomly die. Like it's on a numbers level, like you're not gonna be able to do stupid things with like 500k touch of death on Ingram Malak, but on the flip side, you're not gonna randomly die, and randomly dying was way more common.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we talked about it, like the first week people would get 4-piece and like our tank would died randomly on
Yeah,
whoever the first boss is in the instance on Mythic, and like we couldn't figure out why, other than like, oh yeah, my 4-piece dropped off because he was still used to like holding Cake Smash, right? Like
yeah,
Brad's coming in and it's like, no, you can't do that because you will kill yourself.
yeah.
Um,
Which this means I get
so
to delete my I get the Heavens tracking weak aura. I've got a weak aura that like yells at me when I need to keg smash or I lose my buff. Um,
that's so funny.
and so I could delete that now. Like I'll still lose my buff if I get
Nice.
it, but it won't kill me. So I don't need to
Yeah.
worry about it as much. So I can like sit there on the second charge and I'll get my stacks back. Like on Anduin, I would sometimes want to sit on my keg smash for hitting the lost soul so I could apply the monk debuff to them.
Okay. Yep, yep, yep.
And if you keg smash them, there's like 10 of them anyway, so you just get full stacks immediately back. But if I'm low health or like half health even going into it, I can't hold it. I have to push the button on Anduin. Um,
Right.
and so this means that now I could hold it, and now I could do the what should be the smart play of like pushing kick smash on those ads and getting the debuff applied to them. I found other ways to get the debuff, but it would have been easier if I could just use kick smash.
No, that's funny. I mean, that's an awesome change. It seems like that eliminates, yeah, the frustrating part of the set bonus. The set bonus seems very good.
Yeah,
Just
it's very good.
frustrating in terms of like, yeah, how it was implemented and what can happen.
Yeah, this does so Night Fae note. This means you're
Oh
gonna
god.
see you're going to not see the random massive HP values on Night Fae anymore.
Oh,
Like
okay.
Weapons of Order, Kyrian Brewmaster could reach higher HP values due to the damage ammo Weapons of Order. while Weapons of Order was up. Night Fae could reach those values more frequently because just you press Phalanx Stomp more. But
Yeah.
Night Fae had the downside that like your HP changed so much more. It was super super volatile. It's gonna be a lot more consistent now. If you've gotten used to like seeing your HP go up to like 250k by playing Night Fae, I have some bad news.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, I'm very happy. I'm very very happy with that
Nice.
change.
Nice, nice. Yeah, well, I mean, it looked like it was gonna be a patch with almost no class changes because yeah, these were announced what Friday,
Yeah,
going into the weekend. So,
yeah.
um, no, we got a bunch of new stuff. I mean, Mistweavers didn't, but our Windwalker friends did. Sounds like Brewmaster got a really good change. So,
Mistweaver got a
um,
buff. The buff is that their Brewmaster no longer dies, and thus they don't get punched in the face.
that's fair. That's fair. If you're running two monks, though, I mean, you don't want to do that. There's no point.
Mm,
Well, cool. Well, that's it. I think for a bunch of other classes got changes. I don't think we really. There's nothing. I mean, I'd really want to go through
no, there's not a
on
lot
this
else
podcast,
that
but
is super important.
yeah.
My raid leader is super super hyped that Hunter's got BM Hunter got like a 7% single target buff, but that's not really a monk thing.
Yeah, yeah. Um. So yeah. So the I guess the biggest changes or some of the biggest changes we've seen are actually to the rest of the raid, right? So there's a multitude of changes to pretty much every boss outside of like the opening like two. Like Skullx, I don't think any changes, neither
Yep,
did I don't even know what the first boss's name
Vigilant
is anymore.
Guardian. They
There we
didn't.
go. Thank you.
Yeah, no changes to
Didn't
that.
touch those two.
Yeah,
But we start with Zymox. I guess we'll just sort of quickly run through these. I think the bigger ones come a little bit later, but the initial ones are interesting. So
yep.
Artificer Zymox, so Decipher Relic cast time increased from 25 to 30 seconds. That's the intermission
No,
cast.
that's
I
the
believe ours.
that's the cast that the ads do on the platforms.
Oh, I am terrible with abilities. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, so that one,
S-
this basically actually is like making it so you can limp through a platform if somebody dies. You don't need
yeah.
everybody alive for the platform to still do it. It's going to make it a little bit easier. It's also going to lower the DPS check for it, but it's not like a huge nerf.
Yeah. Okay, that's not too bad. On Pantheon, the imprinted safeguards, which these are the things that on Mythic difficulty you need to run Night Hunters through to like clear the
Yeah,
shields. Basically, the reduction was 50%, both in damage and healing taken. They've reduced that to 35%. Essentially, I think now you can miss an ad and still either kill or heal it just by focusing it, which
we've
is nice.
we've healed ads with the shields on them before, by like sacrificing a priest's entire mana bar for
Oh
the good of the
Jesus.
raid. It was possible to do. I think we've actually killed it once by doing that. You like dump GS and lay on hands, and if you can set up a Spirit Link totem, that's great.
Yeah.
But it's possible to actually just legitimately heal them up with 50%. 35% is going to be way more doable.
Yeah. Yeah. You can definitely probably miss one Night Hunter now and still be okay. To either kill or heal up the ads on Pantheon. But we're gonna skip that fight anyway. Terrible fight. Um next up Lehuvum. Lehuvum got a health reduction to both the ads and the boss itself by 10%, which this just I guess cleans up the intermission, right? Like you might be able to now uh or sorry, just cleans up the intermission so you can kill things slightly easier. Um but the health nerf is interesting. I wonder if that means you can cut off an intermission now.
Maybe. I definitely think on farm you're going to be able to. What
Yeah.
this does also is that it may be possible now to actually do double ad kills twice without using
Oh
bloodlust.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's another possibility. I'm not sure it'll be actually a worthwhile strat to do that, but it's a
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah. But the health nerf hopefully will be nice. It just shortens that. That fight's it doesn't feel long, but it's a
It's
it's
a
a
10
9 minute
minute
fight.
fight. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
9 7 minute fight.
so
It's
long.
yeah. Um Next up we have Halandris with more nerfs. The only mythic difficulty nerf was ephemeral eruption, which is the orbs hitting the boss. their initial damage reduction or their initial damage was reduced significantly on mythic difficulty is the wording. I'm assuming this means it's no longer a one shot, so you can probably miss an orb and live through it.
Yeah,
Um,
so I'm thinking this is like on heroic, you can miss an orb and like it'll probably get people killed, but it won't like instant wipe the raid. You can live through
right.
one. I'm thinking that's what this changes for Mythic.
Yeah. Yeah. Let you like, at least let one hit. And it does leave a dot that is significant, so you'll have to, commit some cooldowns for it. But you'll be able to power through. They also reduce the damage of light shatter, the beam, which is the tank dot or tank beam, from 500% to 300% on heroic difficulty. Again, this probably just lets your tank take two in a row now with cooldowns,
You can already
if
tank
needed.
you can tank two in a row right now with cooldowns. It requires major cooldowns though.
Yeah.
Like we're talking you need to push Zen Meditation with Celestial Brew up or something to live through it, or you stack Fort Brew and Dampen Harm. You use either stack two cooldowns or use one really big cooldown like Zen Med, um, in order to live through it. So
Yeah.
that's going to mean that it's going to move it from needing like Dampen Harm plus Fort Brew to being Fort Brew is okay. You're going to be very scary, but you'll live.
Yeah.
Which is going to make the boss significantly easier to do in like a heroic pug, right? It's going to mean that your tanks don't have to be perfect about getting the swap every time because the swap is very fast. You're swapping like every 5 seconds. It's
Yeah.
like one cast taunt, one cast taunt, boss does a thing, cast taunt, intermission. Like it's very fast.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll be a nice little change to Halandris. And then we really get into I think the biggest changes as we get to these end bosses. So
Yeah.
Anduin got
Oh
another
boy.
round of just dumpstering this kid. So I'll just kind of quickly read through these. His overall health was reduced by 5% in all difficulties. So 5% health reduction to Anduin itself. The monstrous souls got their health reduced by 5% on all difficulties. Monstrous souls, of course, is the intermission ad,
Yeah, that's
I
the
believe.
abomination ad.
Um,
Yeah,
Yep. Anduin's Despair, which are the ads down below.
that's the big ad down below.
Yep,
Yeah,
got its health reduced by 10%. Anduin's Hope, which are the healing ads, had their movement speed reduced, both heroic and mythic difficulty, essentially giving you more time to heal them up, which is nice. Um, which basically means I think you can probably get all four in every intermission.
well, like you
Um,
have to do that on Mythic. You go down, you drop a Master Spell on them. You drop like a some kind of big heal. Like what we do is one set has a Shaman that uses the Venthyr, whatever Chain Harvest, just
yeah.
instantly top like two of them. The other two are at like 90%, and the other one has Beacon of Virtue. The Paladin puts a Beacon of Virtue out on them after
Ah,
the
okay,
Master
yeah.
Spell, and then you just blast heals and heal them up that way. Like you have to get 100% of them on Mythic. I'm a little bit surprised actually that they didn't change it on Mythic to let you miss two.
Yeah, that's
Let
yeah.
you either miss like a doubt or a hope or like two total. Um, I'm a little bit surprised that's not the Mythic change. The Despair health change, like Despair is gonna die so fast now. I
Yeah.
don't know. Um, but yeah, they also
Yeah.
I guess they kind of did in a way. The other changes mean that they kind of made it so you could miss some because they reduced
Yeah.
remorseless winter damage. This is the ticking dot that happens while you are in the intermission. This is the one of the main drivers behind having to get 100% energy on
Yeah, for the Blood
Mythic.
Rush.
So you still do want to have 100% energy in order to just you know do boss dam, but this is going to mean that you maybe don't immediately die to remorseless winter. I mean, we did go through intermissions where we missed one ad. We had 96 energy, but it always gets people. So
Right.
maybe this does it. The Hope Breaker damage over time, which is just if you're a DPS and didn't know this, when he casts Hope Breaker, it applies a permanent dot to everyone every time. And so this is just a 15% reduction to that dot. And then
Yeah.
the Fiendish Souls are the other ads in the intermission. I actually have no idea what Necrotic Claws does. Just no
I
idea.
think I think it's their jump move. I think it's just
Okay.
them jumping.
Okay.
Which is just their cooldown was increased by 50%, so they'll do it, half as often.
Yeah.
Um, which is but yeah, I mean, huge nerfs to Anduin. I mean, I think this again pushes him maybe more appropriately in the position of where he was in the raid,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just another round of mass nerfs because they just went through a bunch of nerfs on Anduin last week, so
yeah,
they're cleaning this place up. We'll say.
yeah. They
They're
clearly
hopefully doing
want
it.
more people to be getting through these bosses.
Exactly, exactly. Next up is Lords of Dread, which we just killed.
Yep,
I think both of us, but a couple of changes here. So again, health reduction on the bosses. So Mal'Ganis and Quintessa both lost 5% of their HP. And then they started reducing some damage. So the Swarm of Decay and Swarm of Darkness damage was reduced by 7.5%. So a little bit less damage in the swarm phases.
yep.
The add heal, the add that heals itself now heals itself for slightly more, 13% versus 10, basically cutting off what is that
That's one cast.
one
Yeah,
one overall cast.
it's
To be able to
yeah. So the timing on Mythic, basically was that the ad would finish healing to full immediately before a swarm phase and immediately before an Among Us phase, and so you would need to like be getting it gripped in as soon as it finished, which is
yeah,
fine. Like it's very doable if you have just a DPS DK. They just go and they grip it. It's fine.
yeah,
Um, it did require you to have a DPS DK. And so if the DK was dead, what we would do is like I would roll out during the Among Us phase or during the Swarm phase and like paralyze it so that we could
yeah,
handle it after the phase ended, and the range could kill it. But it does mean that now you don't have to have a DPS DK per se. Like you have time to be able to, use knockbacks to get it into melee or just
yeah,
kill it. Just
yeah.
like
Have your
have the
rangers
range to
kill
kill
it.
it before the swarm happens.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah,
And before anybody asks, the reason that you can't have your tank DK do it if you have a blood DK is because if they try and go over there, you'll almost certainly end up healing Mal'Ganis because of the other tank taking 2 frontals, or you will have the raid get cleaved by the frontal.
yeah, yeah. So that's a nice little change there. Probably one of the bigger ones is Cloud of Carrion no longer disorients when jumping between players on heroic and mythic difficulty. So if you're to pass sort of the green circles, um, they no longer disorient when they jump between players, which is nice to be able to quickly sort of move them. Where like if someone has too high a stack, you can quickly pass them between a player,
It also
and then that
means that your
individual.
DPS won't interrupt tranquility during the swarm phase by passing it off onto your resto druid.
Oh, true. That is. I didn't even think about that. Yes.
Yeah, it's
Um.
bad. we,
Yeah.
we definitely wiped to that at least once.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, so that is a solid change, we'll say. And then the final change on Lords is that Infiltration of Dread duration was increased by 10 seconds. So you have 10 more seconds for the Among Us phase,
Yeah.
which we didn't really need it. Even in Heroic, I'm assuming on Mythic we probably didn't need it either. So
We actually had a couple of silly wipes to it on Friday. Like we shouldn't have wiped to it, just people weren't voting. Like it's just people
gotcha.
not voting. And having 10 more seconds means that maybe people could have gotten their shit together and voted. But
Yeah.
I don't think that really solved the problem of people not voting.
Yeah.
It does make it a little bit more realistic to do it without a voting week aura, but I still like you really on Mythic you want to vote it. On Heroic, it does mean that maybe in Heroic your pug doesn't have to have 100% of the voting.
Yeah. That's fair. Um, then the only Rygolon change as we move on is that collapsing Quasar Field's duration increased by 50% on Mythic, which
This is
knowing nothing about this boss, I think it just means your Quasar kill timings don't have to be as precise.
yes.
So
So they were 8 seconds, then they became 10 seconds. I don't know if this means they're now 14 seconds.
14 or 15, yeah.
Or if it means they're 20 seconds. I don't think they're 20 seconds. 20 seconds seems like a really long time. But
Yeah.
they are long enough now that you don't have to be nearly as precise with your kill timings. Like the way you do it is the quasars come in sets of 6, but the dark eclipses come in sets of 4. So you kill 4 of them on the first set for your dark eclipses. Then you save 2 for the next set. You kill 2 from the next set and the 2 from the first set for the next 4. and then you kill the final 4 from the second set for your last set of Dark Eclipses.
Hmm.
Um, and and then you get the, I don't think there's a second set or a third set of quasars. But that gives you exactly as many quasars as you have Dark Eclipses, and it all works out. This means that if you accidentally kill one from the first set early, you're not just boned.
Yeah. Which is I think a good. I don't know. Again, not being in a progression, I don't know how often that occurs, but
It depends. Our
yeah,
druids are not allowed to cast Starfall during Rav because they will kill all of them every time. So they're
that's
not
fair
allowed
enough.
to cast Starfall. This means that maybe we can get away with them casting Starfall, and then they just like all the Quasars just die. I still doubt that we're going to want to do that, but it does mean that like one, maybe getting killed a little bit too soon is not just going to wipe the raid. It will make
Yeah,
the boss easier. Not
yeah.
not as much easier as Anduin got, but
No, and yeah, is I want people through that. And then maybe the final set of changes are to the jailer. And so they basically a bunch of these changes, having only killed heroic jailer like twice, and having not had a chance to view this on Mythic just yet. I don't know how impactful these changes are, but there is one big one that I want to talk about, and then we can sort of look at the other ones. The biggest one, at least to the Mythic version of Jailer, is that Diverted Life Shield no longer heals on Mythic difficulty. So for those that are wondering, this is the shield that gets put up by Jailer when you go into the final, the phase 4
the Mythic
of
phase, yeah.
Mythic, which is the Mythic only phase. And basically, what happened is the Jailer would take him to 10%. The Jailer would then heal up to 20%, and you do the phase 4 mechanics to the end of the fight and kill it. There was a way to actually stop that heal from happening with a convoluted use of both mage mechanics and like a specific mage covenant. Actually, it was
Yeah.
Mirror that did it from Venthyr mages, and then so now you don't have to do that anymore. So the shield no longer heal, and then also phase 4 now triggers at 15% on Mythic. So they've essentially normalized it to say you start phase 4 at sort of 5% less HP than you would, and you no longer have to do the whole making sure you have a Venthyr mage to stop this
So
from
they
cast from
they
casting.
fixed the Venthyr Mage thing. This has been a long-standing thing. So they fixed the Venthyr Mage thing shortly
Oh, they
after the
did.
top 5. Um, but people found another way to do it, and there was this long thing of like, is it maybe the mind games, something else, what's going on? It turns out that the boss is like not in range of the tank when he transitions, then it was like interrupting the heal.
Oh, interesting. See, does that mean the boss have to move to then be in range and wouldn't cast the heal?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
weird. Right, scripted issue.
there was this strat developing where like you would have your, tank, your brewmaster, whatever, when you were getting low, like speed, like just roll away. Just roll away and hope that you
Just run away.
just roll away. And it would give you like a tick of the heal, but that's a lot less than all of the heal. And
Exactly.
so this actually is a little bit of a buff to the boss. Like it means that if you execute that, you would have had to do less, but I think, but it is still like significantly less than doing it as intended.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so that's sort of I think a largest change just in terms of that phase 4 transition point. You don't have to worry about sort of cheesing it, getting there and then missing up, cheesing it to then have to then do the whole phase. You just started at 15%. They also sort of reduced the Bloods of Azeroth on Mythic difficulty that spawn from World Crushers and World Shatters. These are again like I think these are the pools that spawn that you stand in and like link people together
And
and
return the blood to Azeroth. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So there's less pools to sort of link together, which I mean, it sounds like that's potentially just it means it's slightly easier in terms of what you're soaking.
it's a
And
pretty
because
significant raid damage event when you do it. It's the people
yeah,
that are channeling the blood. You have to like make a conga line and channel the blood back in, and everybody that's doing it takes a bunch of damage. And in phase 3, there's all the swirlies that come out, right? From the people that
exactly.
do
Yep.
it. So it's gonna make
Yeah.
it easier on the whole because there's just gonna be less of them. Um, but yeah, you still have to do it, right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a little bit less raid damage and less swirlies to dodge. 'Cause now you should. I think there used to be two. in phase 3, and now there should only be one.
Yeah.
So you only have to dodge one side of swirlies instead of two. Um, and then a bunch of normal raid finder and heroic difficulty changes. So decimator no longer knocks back in raid finder normal. Misery no longer knocks back in both raid finder normal and
If you don't
heroic.
know what misery is, that would be because nothing in the Dungeon Journal really is called misery. Nothing in the blog is called misery. It's the last hit of the tank mechanic.
Yeah,
They gave each hit its own name.
so nice of them.
So nice of them.
Um, and then Rune of Compulsion's absorb effect, which is um
That's the
the
mind
mind
control.
control.
Yeah.
Yeah, has been reduced by 33% on normal and heroic, and
Those
then
things have a
10%
lot
on
of
mythic.
health. Oh my god, do
Yeah,
those things have a lot of health. Um,
yeah.
on heroic,
Even on her, even heroic.
yeah, on heroic, you really needed people to be like stacked under it, or you needed a DK to like immediately grip people so they could be AoE CC'd under the boss and get
Yeah,
like. I mean, they didn't need to be under the boss per se, but they needed to be stacked on top of each other, or you just were not going to have the damage to break the shields. So this is going to make it a
exactly.
lot easier. I still don't know that you can realistically pug this boss because of the holes in the ground. Like the holes in the ground are just an absolute pug killer. Uh,
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
the damage check on this boss is not that high, so maybe you can limp to the end. But when you just like lose 3 people in phase 1 to just walking into holes, there's like there's just not a lot you can do.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it's not a, yeah, definitely not a pug friendly boss, but it's some significant changes to Jailer. So I mean, we'll
Yeah,
probably see, you know, maybe a quicker tier or quicker sort of progression starting on some of the guilds getting to Jailer now. So
yeah. This is
because that's the one thing I think we didn't mention. And maybe, sorry, I didn't know what you were gonna say. Sorry, I
oh
didn't mean to
go.
cut you
No,
off.
you're good. Go ahead.
Which was basically like we didn't gain much power as people killing these bosses now as the world first people did, right? Like
Yeah,
we've talked about this, I think at length, about the fact that like this raid seemed to be tuned to having both 4-piece and double legendary in place. It was sort of killed by every guild but one in that state.
yeah.
And so the idea is, we didn't gain much by getting double legendary, by getting 4-piece. And so Blizzard had to nerf these bosses just based on the fact that, like, if it took, Echo and Limit or Liquid, I guess, 300 pulls to kill Jailer, like my guild's, that's a 700 pull boss for my guild.
Okay. When
And there's not enough time.
Argus was my first CE boss that I killed, right?
Yeah.
580 pulls.
That's it.
It's
That's rough.
it
That's
is
rough.
so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like as far as the tier length, at this point last year, like week by week, next week would be the week that we killed Sylvanas in terms of like when Mythic opened.
Oh wow.
We
Yeah.
spent more time in heroic early on this tier to finish our tier sets because they're just so good. Um,
Hmm.
we did spend some extra time in heroic last year in order to finish domination sets, but not as much. Um, so it's even adding another couple weeks to that. We're not even going to be starting, the jailer until after we had killed Sylvanas last year. If you lined up the
That's
tiers next to
crazy.
each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like a
Wow. I
whole
didn't even think about
month.
that.
Um, there's also like if you look at when the nerfs for Sylvanas arrived, um, like we were let me find this. We had a major hot fix on our third week of Sylvanas Prog, at the end of our third week of Sylvanas Prog. Um, and we took too long on Sylvanas, so it was another 3 weeks from that before we actually killed it. But um, that corresponds to like the first rounds of jailer nerfs that we got because we already got a round of jailer nerfs. We already
Yeah.
got a round of jailer nerfs. This is the second round. We actually did not get another round of Sylvanas nerfs.
Yeah, because that set basically just cleaned up P1, right? Like
Right.
the majority of those nerfs were just to make P1 more consistent
Right. Like
on Sylvanas. So yeah.
P1 and P2. So during
Yeah.
it was like Domination Arrow health reduction, Dark Sentinel health reduction, Curse of Lethargy, duration reduction, Decrepit Orb detonation damage, which this is all like phase 2 stuff. And then Veil of Darkness specifically in phase 2 had its size reduced. And then there's like one
Oh
phase
yeah.
3 change. They reduced the Banshee's Fury damage. It's just like Jailer in comparison is like they're hitting it way harder, way sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sort of lends to the fact that I think a lot of people like I think Babs actually made this post or made like a tweet about this, but like the idea that like Anduin, this was I think a 3 like raid instance. I guess there's already been 3, but there would have been a 9.3. Sorry,
Yeah,
9.3 raid instance. So
yeah,
four tiers this expansion, and Anduin was the final boss of the 9.2 patch.
yeah.
And when they condensed it, they sort of had to add the jailer in, and I think if this tier ends at Anduin, that's a solid tier. Like because we would have killed Anduin
Right.
what last week, so
The issue
roughly
that
around
they
the time
run
Sylvanas hit.
into there is they can't have the Jailer persist as a villain for the next expansion. People
Well,
would
I'm saying
hate that.
if they were gonna do a
Oh yeah,
9.3,
yeah,
like if the
yeah,
original plan was to do like
yeah. I
3
mean,
content patches.
I do think they have to get out of the Shadowlands as far as like player base
Yeah.
is concerned. They
Oh no,
just
I
have to get
agree.
out of.
Yeah.
They have to get out of the Shadowlands. Um, I do wish that they had done a like Ruby Sanctum kind of raid for the Jailer though. Like,
Yeah.
give us the first 8 bosses as a standalone raid tier. Anduin's the end boss. You know, and this is not a unique idea. This was we talked about the BDGG interview last
Yeah.
week, and they were like, let's do this instead. And I think that would have been better. I would have, Halandris would have not needed to get the Omega gutting that it did.
Yeah,
It would have
exactly.
needed some nerfs in the same way that like Kel'Thuzad got nerfed and Painsmith got nerfed. But it wouldn't have
Yeah.
needed to get gutted in the way that it did because it was, boss 7 of 11 instead of it would have been 7 of 8 instead of 7 of 11.
Yeah.
It would have been it would have preserved that boss, the fun of that boss in a better way. And it's actually really my preference for them having split this is almost entirely down to them not having to gut Halandris in order to let most guilds progress beyond.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean that was that like Halandris was such a wall
Yeah,
in terms of yeah.
because I mean, if they had nerfed it half as much as they had, right, it would have turned it into like a 200-ish pull boss for a lot of guilds like mine.
Yeah.
And when you have a 200-ish pull boss into another 200-ish pull boss, and then you're done with the tier, that's okay. It's when you have a 200 into a 200 into like a 30 to 50, which is what Lords of Dread ended up for a lot of guilds at our level.
Yeah.
30 to 50, and then another like 100 to 200 on Regalon, and then
Yeah.
another 200 to 300 on the Jailer.
It's such a long tier, yeah,
Yeah,
in terms of full count. It's just yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean they needed these, but
yeah,
I think that's sort of a just a and I again I think this might be my final point because we're getting at time anyway, but
yeah.
it's sort of the overcorrection of Blizzard from
Sanctum.
some from Sanctum, which I think they is a theme that you'll probably we probably see across everything, which is like they always they always take a bunch of feedback and then they overcorrect, which I think they should have, but they always go to like the extreme to ensure that like,
Yeah,
hey, if the raid tier is too easy, it'll never be too easy again, right?
yeah.
Which is like what they did with it, like if the mists into Warlords transition, which was like when World Quest became big. And that was the idea of like people, you did your dailies in Mist and you were done for the day. So you always wanted something to do. It's where sort of the World Quest concept comes from. And now World Quests are
World
generally
Quest for
hated.
Legion, but yes.
Oh, were they? Sorry. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it went
yeah,
like
but the idea
so
was a
in Mist it was like all the dailies, right? And you just had
yeah.
so many dailies. And they really cut back on the dailies in WoD. There were still some, but they weren't nearly as many or as big.
Oh, you're right. 'Cause you're garrison
You
bound.
had
Yeah.
Garrison. And
Yes.
then
Yes. Yes.
so then the world quests were a reaction to you just like being parked in your garrison all the time. And like getting you out in the world and doing things where you could actually see other people and not just be in your own little instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge overcorrection.
Yeah. Which I mean, in
So
fairness, that one actually worked out because world quests ended up being like world quests are a lot better than dailies.
that's fair.
They
That's
are
fair.
they
No,
are
I agree.
just dailies, but I like them significantly better than dailies.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That is fair.
Um, but
So
yeah, I think you're right. It's an
is
overcorrection, and I think kind of to wrap things up, there's a lot that they can learn, not just from this tier and how it's gone, that but from this expansion and how it's gone. And if they genuinely take the lessons from this, um, and they apply them to Dragonflight, it could be a phenomenal expansion.
I think Dragonflight, it has the potential for me to be a miss like expansion where I think it'll be generally hated as you play it. And then when you look back, it'll be probably one of the best expansions.
I really
Like
hope that that's not the case. I really hope that that's not the case.
but the problem is, Emerson, everybody hates the expansion you're in. Like people
Yeah,
generally hated
yeah.
BFA,
I still
but
hate
I would say
BFA. I still hate BFA.
it's not as bad, I feel like, as people think. But no, I am hopeful that Dragonflight also is going to be good. I think it'll,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I mean,
we'll see. We'll have
uh,
alpha. We'll have alpha in 2 weeks.
that's the Anom guarantee. Alpha in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Don't sue us. But I think that is going to bring us to the end of our show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support it and the other work that we do over at the Peak of Serenity, like lobbying for Brewmaster 4-piece changes, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. Lounges are a great place. There's great resources in there, like that now soon to be outdated pin about what killed you with your Brewmaster 4-piece.
Oh,
Just
yes.
lots of good stuff there, even if Brew Lounge is still talking about F1,
It was a good race.
apparently. Well, thank
Yes.
you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.